This independent, strictly residential pocket survived the surrounding urban sprawl through a series of deliberate, defensive maneuvers. To understand why a town would need to wall itself from the surrounding economy, we have to look back to the 1840s. The Republic of Texas desperately needed to populate its northern frontier, offering massive land grants through the Peters Colony to anyone willing to carve out a farm. The families who arrived here built their lives on the fertile soil of the Trinity River Basin. But out on the raw prairie, these early settlers were entirely dependent on geography and highly vulnerable to the regional expansion happening around them. By the 1850s, those original pioneer tracts had grown into a loosely organized agrarian settlement known as Bethel. Families arrived via the old wagon trail, raising cattle, corn, and cotton. As the population grew, so did the need for communal ties. Residents donated land to build the Free School, a one-room cabin that doubled as a community center, and eventually formally organized the Bethel Presbyterian Church. But in 1875, a new railroad line bypassed Bethel, laying track 3 miles east in Lewisville. Economic gravity shifted overnight. General stores and blacksmiths migrated to the tracks. Without a station, Bethel hollowed out, eventually consolidating its school in 1940. Bypassed by the railroad and lacking any unified municipal status to anchor its development, the Bethel community eventually dissolved, leaving its original farms to be carved up and absorbed by the surrounding towns. The land where Bethel once stood remained relatively quiet until 1957, when the federal government completed the Lewisville Lake Dam. Designed to manage flood risks and secure a reliable water supply for the booming Dallas area, the project was an absolute marvel of industrial engineering. The resulting hydrological shift was incredibly fast. Within just 2 weeks of the dam's closure, the Elm Fork backed up into a sprawling reservoir, flooding old ranches and instantly creating 187 miles of new shoreline. This sudden abundance of waterfront property attracted a new demographic. Affluent professionals living down in the wealthy Dallas neighborhood of Highland Park discovered the lake and quickly started buying up parcels on the southern shore to build weekend getaway cabins. The dam was meant to hold back water, but it ended up creating a highly desirable, extremely valuable recreational real estate market that local residents would soon realize they needed to protect. By the early 1960s, about 100 of those weekenders decided they loved the lakeside quiet enough to transition their cabins into permanent, full-time homes. But as they settled in, they noticed the city of Lewisville was aggressively expanding its borders toward the lake. The residents recognized the threat. If Lewisville annexed their land, they would be subject to outside zoning laws, commercial development, and housing patterns that would erase their nature-oriented atmosphere. Remembering what happened to Bethel a century earlier, they decided to fight back. On Valentine's Day 1963, led by a local rancher named Robert DuVall, the Lakeside residents took a tactical countermeasure and officially incorporated their own city. They chose a name that honored both their affluent roots and their desired future. Highland nodded to their origins in Highland Park, while Village signaled their commitment to maintaining a small, close-knit community ethos. They weaponized local government. By incorporating, they drew their own boundaries, ensuring that any future urban sprawl from the surrounding Dallas metroplex would stop exactly at their city limits. In 1974, a new regional catalyst arrived, the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Its massive scale rewired the entire regional economy. The lake cities of Denton County were suddenly highly accessible. Highland Village became the perfect commute for well-paid commercial pilots, corporate executives, and engineers who wanted high-quality residential life near the airport. This chart tracks the resulting population explosion. In 1970, the town had just 516 residents. Over the next decade, that number spiked by 529% as developers rushed to meet the demand. When the railroad came through in 1875, the original Bethel settlers were powerless to adapt. Because Highland Village was a legal municipality before the airport opened, they had the authority to handle this massive influx entirely on their own terms. They cemented this control in 1986 by adopting a home rule charter. This legal mechanism granted the city full autonomy to enforce strict zoning regulations, allowing the council to explicitly reject heavy commercial or industrial density. Look at the physical results today. Old family ranches were carefully transitioned into strictly residential subdivisions, prioritizing large lots and dense tree canopies. Massive federal infrastructure projects like reservoirs and international airports will always dictate where people move, but deliberate local governance, like a strategic incorporation on Valentine's Day, is what allows a community to preserve its identity and decide exactly how it lives.